to another episode of Pay It Forward. Today we're going to be talking about your disadvantage statement. We're going to give you 3 different points of view. My name is Sameh Solomon. I run my Instagram channel and my YouTube channel called Dental Life. I am a second-year dental student at AADSAS.
Hello everybody, my name is Fernanda. I'm a D2 at UCLA School of Dentistry. Here you can see my Instagram if you have any questions.
Hi, my name is Niveen and I am an incoming D1 at Western University. So follow me at 𝒂𝒢 on Instagram and I can answer any questions.
So please note that whatever information we provide you in these presentations, it's all from our personal experiences. So this is only a guide. It's not guaranteed that you'll get into dental school. So here we have some resources that I think will be helpful for you. So here we have the AADSAS official guide to dental schools. This is basically your Bible, Quran, Torah, whatever you believe in. And then it comes in different forms. So you can get the book we have over here, which is $40, or you can get the AADSAS Dental School Explorer, which is basically kind of a website or an app that you can use, which is $25, or you can get the bundle, which is both versions, and it's $50. Or you can also get the AADSAS Getting into Dental School. So AADSAS stands for the American Student Dental Association, and most dental schools in the nation, they have a specific chapter for that school, and you get a membership and you get different discounts for DET resources. Grad School Grades. So this is a new service. So it gives each school's admission stats, GPA, DET scores and all that, and prerequisites and whatnot. It also gives the clinical experience at that specific school, and it ranks them into 4 different categories, and it basically gives you everything in a table format, and you can switch like the order of them to organize it however you want. And it will give you multiple reviews that are written by dental students at that specific program. It's pretty cool because it gives you the pros and the cons, and these are written, like I said, by dental students at these programs. The membership, it gives you 12 months access for $50. They also provide important information on their Instagram page at Grad School Grades. So here you probably are familiar with this page by now. So for this presentation, we're going to go under my application, under your personal information, and then you're going to have 8 subsections. And out of these 8, we're going to focus today on your environmental factors, which has the disadvantage statement. As I have here, before starting your application, be sure to read the application instructions and follow them accordingly. So here, the disadvantage consideration / statement, either or, it will give you a limit of 4,500 characters. If you input the information in that box, it will cut off whatever overflow text that you have. It basically asks you, do you wish to be considered a disadvantaged applicant by any of your designated programs that may consider such factors, social, economic, or educational? If yes, please answer the following question. The prompt says, provide any information about your background that may help clarify your disadvantaged student status. Once you submit this statement, you cannot edit it. So you have to make sure that you have the right information and the final proofread copy before you hit submit. So with that being said, make sure you write, you edit, you polish, you think, and keep going in that cyclic cycle that we talked about in the personal statement videos. So last year, I posted this infographic on my Dental Life Instagram page. If you guys are not following, make sure you follow. And I was doing, instead of these Pay It Forward videos last year, during the application cycle, I was doing a segment called Tooth Tip, Tooth Days by Dental Life, which is a weekly segment where I release a helpful tip, and make sure you check it out. What makes a disadvantage statement? So the disadvantage consideration, so this is the same prompt that I went over in the previous slide. So here I have the infographic that I showed on the previous slide. So basically the word disadvantage has so many synonyms, you can pick your pick. But for me, I identified with multiple of the words that are on this slide, and therefore I did some research because I was very indecisive if I should do a disadvantage statement or not. And now looking back at it, when I applied the first time, I did a disadvantage statement. When I applied the second time, I also did one. And I think that a lot of people just brush off the word disadvantage just because they don't consider themselves disadvantaged.
I will say that you don't necessarily need to fill it out. It's not gonna hurt you, but it can help you. It all depends on you. Take a look at these words and see if any of this applies to you. Schools are not gonna mind if you fill it out or not.
It's not required and it's not even recommended. It's just an option that's there for you. So we talked about this in the last video about you being the center of attention, and make sure you own it, because this application is all about you. You are trying to present yourself in the best image. But one of the main things that I mentioned in the last video is this guy right here. Don't be an imposter, don't be fake. Don't try to present yourself like someone that you're not, because if and when you get an interview, you being there in person during the interview doesn't reflect the person you presented on paper. That's going to be a discrepancy and you're going to be rejected because of that. Just be honest from the beginning to the end of this entire application process. And all of these should connect together to present that person that you are. So in the last presentation, we also talked about the do's and the don'ts. So these are some of the do's that we talked about and how they can benefit you when you write your personal statement, your disadvantage statement, anything that has basically a text box. I think the do's and the don'ts apply to that. So if you want an in-depth discussion of these do's and don'ts, now the don'ts. So these are things that you should not do in your application because it can backfire. And you want to make sure that you stay away from that and do everything by the book. So I'm going to have a link up here for my previous videos for the do's and the don'ts and everything that talks about the personal statements. So here's what I presented on my Instagram blog last year with the disadvantage statement infographic. So basically, as many of you guys know, that I applied twice to dental school. And first time I applied, I got rejected from 19 schools. Second time I applied to 20 schools. And I did things a little bit differently the second time. And I honestly think that's why I got in. So if you're a reapplicant, we're gonna do a video about reapplying and what you can do differently and how you should approach the reapplication cycle. And I believe that will help you. I still had the big picture, the big theme from my first disadvantage statement, because that didn't change. Because if I was poor, if I was seeking financial assistance from the government, that didn't change, that happened. But how that changed to be more representative of my story. I would highly recommend you write your personal statement first and then write your disadvantage statement after. So I wrote a super extensive personal statement, and I think it was about 9,000 characters in links, so that's like twice the size of the required personal statement link. Because in my mind, I knew that I'm eventually gonna trim it, but I used the story and I basically took out sentences that were not fitting for the personal statement, and I used that as my starter or my igniter for my disadvantage statement. So that way I didn't have to start from scratch. I had some story to elaborate on. And basically, disadvantage statement is the sequel to your first movie or something like that. Essentially, admissions is looking at your application holistically, and your story should flow like a waterfall from all the short blurbs that are like 200 characters or 600 characters, like from your work experience, your extracurricular activity, and so on, to your personal statement, to your COVID-19 impact statement, to everything. So your tone should be the same throughout. And admissions honestly reads thousands and thousands of applications every cycle. And some pre-dents don't consider themselves disadvantaged because they don't, like, let's say if they're rich, white, pink, purple, whatever you want to be, they think that that category is not considered disadvantaged. Like I said, just sit by yourself and kind of like look at the journey from once you were born and what your family had to go through until this point in time where you're sitting in front of your computer and applying. did you have any struggles? Did you have anything that was a hardship that you had to go through? If so, I encourage you to think about writing a disadvantage statement. For me, I was fortunate enough to live on 2 continents, and I talked about how I immigrated from Egypt to here and how my family and I escaped religious persecutions. And some people were not fortunate. How were you not fortunate to have lived on 2 continents and whatnot? All in all, the disadvantage statement is all a matter of perspective. So all you should do is write a great story that allows the reader to see your point of view and what you had to go through.
Here's my 2 tips about the disadvantage statement. Like I said, you don't have to fill it out. Schools are not going to take it against you if you don't, but it can really help you. And so here are some of the questions that you can ask yourself when you're brainstorming. So one of the things is make sure that you explain your struggles, like Sameh explained, but you want to focus in the positivity. Yes, you want to explain some of the things that you went through, but you want to say how this helped you. Do you become more resilient? Are you able to empathize with other people? And so on. And so now you can explain also how do you grow up. So in the case of Sameh, he came from Egypt. I came from Mexico. And so I kind of explained how to some extent contributed to my disadvantage. And you will see that soon when we go over the disadvantage statement. Also, you can explain if you're an immigrant. Do you experience struggles during college? And this can help you to explain if you have bad grades. It doesn't mean that you are partying. Maybe you have emotional struggles, mental struggles. You might want to disclose those. It's not going to hurt you. It actually will show that if you go through those in dental school, you will be able to deal with those. Kind of similar to what we were talking about in personal statement. You want to explain also emotional hardships, which is kind of similar to the struggles within college. It could be at any stage of your life. Then you might want to explain why you took a gap year. A lot of people think oh, you took a gap year just because you wanted to travel or you wanted to just take a time off. Some people might see it not so well, and so you might want to explain yourself. Do you want to get more experience? Do you have economic problems? The application it's not cheap, so that will be a place to explain it. Then you can explain it if you're first generation. It could be for college or for dental school. If nobody in your family is healthcare related, that way you can kind of explain how you didn't have any guidance. Then if you went to community college, why do you do that? That could help. A lot of schools might not like community college classes. That's another story. Other schools don't mind it, so you might want to just explain it just in case. You're gonna see that in my disadvantage statement. I already covered the bad grade, but you can see some examples of family, economy, or any issues out of your control. But remember, keep it on the positive side, what you got out of it, and how you improve. Then last but not least, if you have space, you can connect it to how you're gonna become a dentist, and this can help you to maybe empathize to certain populations, or you are able to make your clinic a safe place for those patients. But remember, keep it to a minimum. You want to talk more about the disadvantage statement, not so much about the personal statement, which is why dentistry. And last but not least, do not feel ashamed about your story. Own it. The reason is a lot of times we are oh, I have family issues when I was growing up, but I don't think I should talk about those. You should talk about those. You never know. You're going to have patience with these issues. You want to show the committee that yes, you have problems, and you're not trying to make them feel sorry about you. It's more about, hey, I had these experiences. If I have patients that are experiencing this, I will be able to treat them well and empathize to them. So that's what you're trying to show, your strengths.
So to hit on Fernanda's point about your struggles, I think everyone has gone through some type of struggle, and it could be, think about everything that they mentioned, social, economic. Think about, for instance, let's say you have a disability that hindered your ability to perform in a certain class. For me personally, it wasn't a disability, but I was never great at math. And so I always sought out tutoring, and that helped me out a lot. So that's something that's showing that just because I was struggling with it doesn't mean that I wasn't doing something about it, while at the same time sharing that it wasn't easy for me to go through those courses. So this is what we mean by really think about what you've done, and it can be very small, but the important thing about it is that they're going to pay attention to what you did about it, and then to how this is going to contribute to you as a future dentist. So I'll go into that. And Fernanda mentioned relating to your patients as a dentist. So for me, I talk about, moving to different communities a lot, and that allowed me to learn about different communities. So my first tooth tip is to be genuine in your story. And by that, I mean truly say your story as it was. I think I spent less time on my disadvantage statement than my personal statement. Yet my disadvantage statement, when I would watch a reader read it, they were more engaged than they were in my personal statement, because I think it's truly about your life. Not just about why you want to do dentistry, but you as a person. So show them who you are. I think this was one of the piece in the application that really told them who I was, my background and things like that, more than my personal statement or my experiences. So be genuine in your story, share it. And then at the end of every story that we talk about in our examples, always make them 1 to 2 sentences, because like we said, we don't want to come off like we're complaining about it or we're oversharing about our mom or our dad. Let's say our parents went through a divorce. Yes, say your parents went through a divorce, and then right away go into how it impacted you, and then what did you learn from it and how that helped you be better, with patients you see, peers. Maybe you became more understanding of others from that experience. We said it's 4,500 characters. For me, in the beginning, I thought I was going to write only a paragraph, and it turned out that I actually took up all the 4,500 characters. This is not to say you should just put fluff just to fill out the space. Don't do that. But I would really highlight everything you can remember that you felt like it was a struggle for you. Even if you think they're going to think, wow, they really struggled with that, how are they ready for dental school? It will show something else that you don't know. So my other thing is that, once again, it shouldn't be just about dentistry. It should be about your life struggles, but in a way imply how these struggles will make you better in dentistry. So that way you are still pinpointing to dentistry, but not right out saying it. So for example, I moved to different communities growing up, and I mentioned that I got to experience a lot of different cultures, and that built my cultural competency. So then in return, that's able to help me better connect with patients from diverse backgrounds. So do you see how I connected it right away to how it did help me in my volunteering in my work experience in undergrad, and that will also help me when I am in dental school and as a future dentist. And then my last tooth tip is, after you state how an event impacted you, always try to put it in a positive way. Like we said, don't ever come off like you're complaining, because you don't want to make it seem that you weren't thankful for your obstacles, because your obstacles did change you in a good way too, not just a negative way. So in that sense, that's why we say always make it positive. Even during your interviews, you should share your experience, but always make it positive, even if it's a question like, what's your weakness?
So here you can see my disadvantage statement. So as you can see, I started first where I grew up. And so, yes, I was born in the United States, but I didn't spend too much time here. I grew up in Mexico, in a rural area. And so that kind of relates to why dentistry was, relates why I wanted to do dentistry a little bit, but I left that in the personal statement. So they had both. Do not repeat information in both. Do not waste space. And so from there, I kind of explained how we had economic issues. Then when I decided to come here in the United States, mostly because I didn't have the opportunity to go to university. And I had initially my aunt, I mentored her because she really was an influential for me to come to the United States, because she was already living here. So she pretty much gave me a home and everything. I added that at the beginning, but when I showed it to somebody else, they were like, don't focus too much on your aunt. Go ahead and talk about yourself. And so I changed that in a way that it was more my initiation, my motivation to come, not so much like the help of my aunt. So keep that in mind. Then after that, I explained how I struggled at the beginning because it was high school, it was another language, I didn't have my family with me. Yes, I was with my aunt, but not my immediate parents, so it's a different. But you can see right away how I kind of compensated for that. As you remember, Niveen explained how it's important to go back to what exactly you did. So she went for Turin. In my case, I did went to Turin, and then after that, I was able to learn a language in my case. And then I even included my GPA and what percentage that I graduated from high school to kind of show like, yes, I was able to compensate well. Then after that, I explained like, even though, yes, I was doing well academically, I didn't have good mentorship. The only thing I was given as an advice was like, apply to as many scholarships as possible. So I did. I applied to 68 scholarships. And I didn't get all of them. I got like maybe 5, but that was enough. And so after that, I also explained how they didn't explain to me that I should go directly to university. Not so much like go directly to university, but the community college was not seen well by some schools, dental schools. And so for me, to be honest, a lot of people told me like, oh my God, you went to community college, it's gonna affect you. But now that I'm here in dental school, I don't think that's true. It's more like it's not so true, at least from UCLA. And I don't think it's from the schools that I apply because I got accepted. So it depends. It depends on the school that you apply. And so keep that in mind. So then I explained why I went to community college. In my case, it was mostly economic problems. Then after that, I explained that, yes, I was able to get that free out of this. Apply to different scholarships, so that shows initiative. Then after that, I explained how I wanted to compensate for community college and then why I took a gap year. In my case, during that time, my parents were applying for residency. So it's a very expensive process on itself. And so I decided to, instead of using the money that I was trying to save for like taking the DAT, the study tools, and like applying to dental school, I used that money to help my parents to come to the United States. And so the nice thing is during my gap year, I was able to save money again and apply. And I feel like it was my best decision because I got more experience within the dental field and that helped me in my application. But that's one of the things that I wanted to explain. And so make sure that you apply your gap years. And then at the end, as you can see, I also explained like, yes, I took a gap year, but this is what I did. So I show improvement. And we're gonna explain soon how COVID question within the application should work. This is kind of similar to that, but we're gonna talk about that later. And then after that, I kind of wrap it up and explain that I'm resilient, what I learned pretty much, and that I will be able to overcome any problem I find. And so that way you can see that I kept it optimistic, show what I need to show, explain what I need to explain. If you had any bad grades, explain them there. If you have any emotional problems, explain them there, that kind of stuff. So yeah, don't be ashamed of your story, own it.
I really liked your story, and I think that it was a strong disadvantage statement. It definitely sets you apart from other applicants, and it's very unique because that was like, now after hearing your story, I think the fact that you were born here, went back to Mexico, and the fact that you were living with another family member that is not your parent and all that, that story is unique to Fernanda. And that's what I'm saying. Almost everybody, I think, has a story to share that is unique to them and adds more to the character that you are, and why that character is going to be a phenomenal dentist once they get into dental school and once they graduate. So that's why we're making these videos, and this one specifically, because a lot of people just brush over the disadvantage consideration and they don't even consider it.
I really liked how you mentioned why you took your gap year, and you mentioned your parents applying for a residency. I think that point showed that you're like a really caring person to, you know, put their needs as a priority over your dream, obviously, of applying and such. So that's really, so this is what I mean about you be genuine in your story, because you don't know which point is gonna hit, you know, the admissions people the right way, because it really shows the type of person you are through that. I think it's more of the East Coast schools that pay attention to community college credits, and I know in particular Tufts University is specific on how many units you can have transfer from community college. So for students watching this, I would say definitely check the website of each school, if you can, that you're thinking of applying to, and see if they have restrictions on the amount of credits that could be transferred over to your university. So I'm gonna go ahead and share a few sentences from my disadvantaged essay, just because I think this will help whoever's watching way more than listening to my whole story, because my story is my story, right? So for you, it should be something that you've struggled with or that you see as a disadvantage. But the reason I'm sharing these specific sentences is because I think if you don't include such sentences in your disadvantage statement, it would be read as in you're just sharing about your story and not saying what you learned from it and why, this is something that you wanted to highlight to them. And like we said in the personal statement videos, do not let them connect the dots for you. You tell them how to connect the dots. So that way they're not taking something that you don't want them to take from your story and then missing your whole point of why you shared your story. So for instance, my last sentence in my second paragraph was talking about my economic and socially disadvantaged story. And I say my economically and socially disadvantaged background impacted my education in a positive manner because it taught me resilience, independence, and exposed me to various communities. So I hit on the points, and I do say that I want the admissions people to know that this was a positive thing. That way they're not misunderstanding my intention in including it. Another sentence I wanted to share that I think would help provide as an example for others when you're writing your essay is balancing my courses while committing to new leadership positions and figuring out how to make my parents understand why I had to stay at school until 11 p.m. was stressful. However, it taught me how to be flexible and communicate with my parents from an understanding perspective. And so what I want to highlight from here is that, one, I was showing that I'm trying to balance multiple tasks at once. Two, it's showing that I understand how to communicate with people who are not initially understanding of why you need to do something. So for instance, if you are in the dental clinic and you explain to a patient you need a teeth cleaning before you get your teeth whitened, you have to say it in a very understanding perspective. I also hit about flexibility, and I think that's so important because when you are in dental school, a lot of them that I know of ask about how you handle change, because some of them, especially the new dental schools, will be figuring things out, and so they want to know, are you gonna sort of struggle? And then also when you are in a dental clinic, there's a lot of times where something that was a filling turns out to be a root canal, and now you have to change your whole game plan. And it's like rolling with the punches is very important. So I shared my story, but the important part of it is what I took from it and how that's going to help me in the future. And lastly, my conclusion paragraph was really just wrapping up everything. And I hit about, I'll just go ahead and read it. I say, I embody the strength I gained from moving to different communities and translating for my parents in clinics and school offices, as it intensified my passion for serving others, further developed my cultural competency, and exposed me to compassionate leaders. Adapting to new areas and constantly meeting new people from a young age has given me the ability to work comfortably with people from diverse backgrounds. And I think this is really true. I didn't really struggle with, seeking out new opportunities and just connecting with patients, whether it was in the clinic or whether it was in school. Like, it came very natural to me, and I never really knew why until I started writing this essay. And I thought to myself, like, maybe that's why, because I would go with my parents to these offices that were mostly adults, and so it gave me that sort of, I guess, comfort and always approaching people that I've never met before and talking about a random thing with them. And I think that's so important because your patients are not all going to be people you know. So that's why I also hit on that. And then two, I know that the schools I was applying to were definitely looking for students, you know, who are comfortable treating and helping people or patients from diverse communities. So that's another reason why I wanted to add that in, so that they know that this is something I want to do, not because I'm going to be forced to do it at the school that I attend. So those are the sentences that I want a student to keep in mind when they're writing their disadvantaged statement, because a lot of times when I first initially started drafting it out, I just said my story, and it's like, what's the point of your story, you know? So you always want to say the purpose of why you're saying something.
So I really liked how you talked about the cultural competency, Niveen. And I think when you just sit down and start drafting these personal statements, disadvantage statements, and whatever like essay that you write for these programs, I think it makes you become self-aware of your journey. Ever since you graduated from high school up to this point, you just been driving at 100 miles per hour. You didn't sit down and actually think about the entire journey that brought you to this point where you are trying to get into a graduate program, a doctoral program in our case here. And I think for me, when I sat down to write my personal statement and my disadvantage statement, I literally picked my own brain, and I'm like, okay, oh, this is why I did this. This is why my parents did this. And it just makes you appreciate the entire journey and your story. And that's what I mean. Like, if you guys put in effort, I think you can make this a very strong essay without adding anything that is not unique to you or that is a lie or any of that. Because at the end of the day, it's either you are disadvantaged or you're not. There's no in between. There's no gray area.
I totally agree. I think the personal statement and the disadvantage, as well as the experiences section of the application, were very reflective for me, because you're so focused on trying to get in that you don't really think about, wait, why do they want to know this about me? Or the idea of, you know, why do you want to be a dentist? I think so many times you're just like going in the mode of taking the classes, taking the exams and all that. And it's like, wait, why do you want this though? You know? So I think these type of essays, they help after you get accepted to know why you want to do this. And also for your interviews, it really makes it a lot more clear so that you can articulate yourself better during the interviews.
If you do it that way, you set yourself up for success, and that's what we want you to do. So I'm going to go ahead and read my disadvantage statement. I was born and raised in Egypt. When I was 10 years old, my family and I escaped religious persecution and found refuge in the United States. This was all made possible when my father applied for and won the diversity immigrant visa lottery. The lottery's purpose is to diversify the immigrant population in the United States. My father had to sell everything he had, including his bike repair shack, and ultimately borrowed money from friends in order to apply for this lottery. My parents came to the United States with only their high school diplomas, 3 children, and immeasurable hope. I came from a low-income household, and immigrating to the United States did not change that. We settled in Ventura County, California, where we struggled through the cultural and financial shocks. Nevertheless, every day I embrace my family's struggle and our strength to persevere towards this current point in our lives. At first, I felt like an outsider in the United States. I made it my primary goal to become fluent in English. My first accomplishment in the United States was ranking number 1 in my ESL, English as a Second Language class. In 2004, my father was able to obtain a minimum wage, $6.75 cashier job with guidance from our church's outreach program. My mother struggled to find employment, but through the help of our church, she obtained her first minimum wage job as a bakery clerk. Sadly, within 2 years, that job ended after she was diagnosed with acute carpal tunnel syndrome in both hands due to the work-related issues. She was a hard worker. I remember visiting her and seeing her constantly lifting heavy items while sometimes being mocked by her coworkers for her minimal fluency in English. This was my mother's first and potential last job. It devastated my family and I to see her emotionally and physically damaged. The loss of my mother's income also meant that my father would be the sole wage earner. He had to push himself hard at work to support our family. After he was hospitalized multiple times, we realized that we needed to relocate or he would eventually work himself to death. So we moved to San Bernardino County, California, a low-income area where affordability was a daily luxury. Relocating made me feel comfortable knowing that my father was less strained about being the sole breadwinner. To lessen my family's financial burdens, I obtained my first job at a gas station while in high school. During my senior year of high school, I enrolled in the regional occupational program for dental assisting. After I started working as a dental assistant, I was able to provide additional income to support my family. Obtaining a registered dental assistant RDA license strengthened my interest in the dental field and made becoming a dentist even more appealing. This opportunity offered financial security to my family and I, so instead of going to a university after high school, I made a difficult decision to stay close to home to continue assisting my family financially. To pursue a higher education, I began taking classes at a community college while working as an RDA. For 6 consecutive years, I balanced being a full-time student while working full-time. Upon graduating from community college, I achieved 2 associate degrees and transferred to the University of California, Riverside. And I achieved a Bachelor's of Science degree in neuroscience. I still work as an RDA to contribute to my family's income, as it is my pleasure and duty as their eldest son instead of discretionary spending money. Collectively, my experiences and accomplishments began after immigrating to the United States, where my family and I thought a safe haven. If it were not for God's grace, my family's unconditional love, and government financial assistance, I would not be the man I am today. My willingness to relinquish my family's immeasurable hope became a driving force in my pursuit of a career in dentistry. My persistence inspired my younger brother and my mother to pursue careers in dentistry as dental assistants. My wise career choices and accomplishments have inspired my younger brother to follow in my footsteps. Meanwhile, my mother recovered from her acute carpal tunnel syndrome and also became a registered dental assistant, wishing one day to manage my dental practice. Our family's ionic bond is a vital aspect of my upbringing and personality, as it enables me to overcome my obstacles and to realize my full potential as an American citizen.
I like how you share about your family dynamic, because in essence, it's sharing about you and what kind of person you are. And I think one thing that dental schools may look for is how you would interact with your peers. Like, are you family oriented? How are you going to be with others? So this is what I mean by the implications you're providing through your story.
I definitely agree with that, especially the part where you said that you decided to go to become an RDA instead of going to university. A lot of people, especially here in the medical culture, which is not a bad thing, but it's not something that they would usually do, is try to put family first instead of the individual, which is okay. It's just differences. And so it shows your strengths in that. And so if you were to relate it to being a dentist, I know that you would try to your business, and you would think about the overall people, everybody, their well-being instead of yours, which is a very important thing.
So for me, that was my intention with these stories. I always put the other person in front of me. In doing that, I think it gives me pleasure and it makes me happy that I'm able to help the person that's in front of me. Looking at it retrospectively, I think when I was crafting the disadvantage statement specifically, it pulled on the emotional strings because of the stories that I included. It gave the admissions committee at whatever school I interviewed at kind of a prelude to what to expect from the guy that's going to show up and interview with that program. And for me, like all of these stories from every detail that happened, even like if you talk to people in admissions right now that know me and kind of keep up to me and my family dynamics and all that, I still go home and see my family like once a month. I make that a purpose because it's how my family dynamic is. And even like during my interview, they asked me, if you were offered admission here at AT still, would you consider that? Like the fact that you're gonna be out of state away from your family. So even the admissions committee kind of like, okay, like this guy is very attached to his family. If we offer him a seat, will he actually consider it? I'm like, yes, absolutely, because of that school's mission and so forth. So they read your documents, whatever essays you give them, and they bring that narrative into the interview to kind of like have you elaborate on whatever you wrote down. So the disadvantage statement, you cannot edit it once you submit it. I have to share this so I don't have to come back and say I told you so. So consider this as a warning. We are reading our personal statements, our disadvantage statement, our COVID-19 statements, all the information that's included in these Dental Life Pay It Forward mission videos are our property, our work. We put in a lot of effort to make these videos and produce them and release them out to you guys. So please, when we read our stories to you, it's to help you out. So please don't hurt yourself by plagiarizing our work. Dental schools use a plagiarism software, such as Turnitin and other softwares, that has all of the documents submitted to AADSAS portal in previous years. So they have ours, they have all of the other applicants that applied in the past years. So don't plagiarize. This is your story at the end of the day. Be unique. We have a plethora of information in these videos, and that is intentional to give you all the resources that you need to help you write your own story. So consider yourself advised, and best of luck. Reach out to me if you have any questions or any of the other members of the Pay It Forward team. God bless. So the AADSAS portal pushed back the submission date to June 16th, 2020. And I think that's good. It gives you about a week or two to not be late. And I really recommend people to submit their applications ASAP. So that way the rolling admissions gets rolling and your name is in the system right away. And also, as I always recommend, make sure that you download your application so that way you have something to look at in preparation for your interviews. Again, make sure you download your application as a whole. So this is your disadvantage section under the environmental factors. And as always, best of luck and remember to pay it forward. This has been a pleasure for me to make these videos for you guys. And this is how I keep my positive mindset, is giving back to everybody and helping you guys out, because I know it has been a difficult time for everybody and you are not alone.
I personally understand how it is to try to maybe fight against the waves. And so in this case, it's the wave of the pandemic. Don't look at it that way. It is better to collaborate, and for that reason, it's important to pay it forward. And that's the reason I wanted to do it. And I know the disadvantage statement is a very important way to you to show it. And I know you will rock it. So yeah,
thank you.
Pay it forward.
For me, I'd like to pay it forward because I love teaching, honestly, and just sharing these tips and tricks basically that I was able to learn from others, to pass them forward because they helped me. So, you know, why not help someone else?
Thank you, ladies, for your time and your efforts. This has been an amazing session. And if you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'm available all over social media, literally. Reach out, don't be scared. I'll try to answer your questions as soon as possible. And have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.
There's so much strength in you and me.